for the regular season.
That was a lot of math that you just threw us there.
It's the one time I get to pretend like I actually know what I'm doing with numbers. But other than that, we're completely off the table here. Now, I do want to take a look back, even though we're moving on to the Twins. The game yesterday for the Orioles to wrap things up with New York, they were looking for that first sweep in a long time. Things were good until Corbin Burnes exited. So you're here more or less to answer some consternation that we have seen as to why Corbin Burnes exited.
Right. I mean, a lot of fans were upset about it. The only reason that for me there was like the element of surprise at all was because Brandon Hyde had said previously, maybe a few days ago, that they weren't going to shorten the starters because we're trying to win these games. And they turned around and they shortened Corbin Burnes. But there were some rumblings that they were going to be doing that with him, that Burnes knew it that day. And sure enough, and this is not an unusual thing that happens. Teams do this all the time. I believe Kyle Bradish was shortened his last start last year. Now, granted, they had clinched by then, but it's a very common move. He's not going to be working on extra rest when he starts Tuesday. By the way, he's starting game 1 Tuesday. So it made sense. They had talked about it. He understood it. He was in on it. And yet people are taking this as a sign that he was like furious when he came out, and he wasn't. And I think it would have been a little easier for fans to accept it. Maybe it had been 5-0 when that happened. It wasn't a 1-0 beautiful pitcher's duel with Garrett Cole, and then the bullpen gives up 6 runs into 6. If that doesn't happen, maybe it's a little bit easier. Plus, they were officially eliminated from the division. They still haven't clinched the home wild card, maybe tonight. So I think all those things made it look worse than it was. But it was planned, and there was a method to the madness, because you do want to kind of freshen him up a little bit because he won't be getting that extra rest. And this will in no way influence whether he re-signs with the Orioles. I saw that one floated on quite a few social media platforms, like, I was going to stay, but not now. And it's like, that isn't the case at all. That has nothing to do with it. It has nothing to do with his reaction to Craig Kimbrell being released. People are just now hunting for reasons why Corbin Burnes isn't going to re-sign here because of that. It's going to come down to the money. We all know that.
So he's not Garrett crocheting it.
Is
what you're saying here. Well, that's always good to know. Now, we do want to take a look at this because you just said it. He's going to get the game 1 ball. That's not much of a surprise. They have done a really good job this year of making sure even if other people have to shift, he's the one that stays on his schedule. It has not had to be affected. But let's dive into the rest of this. Let's hypothesize a little bit here. Where do you see this playoff roster going? Because it does have to change.
Yeah. And by the way, they could have maybe simplified things and just had Zach Eflin start game 1, because he's working on extra rest. And if Corbin Burnes would have had his extra rest at game 2, he's your game 1 guy. But they are going to have to get back down to 26. And, where there's a lot of confusion now. You notice the next 2 starters are TBA.
Yeah, you get to do math
Great. Let's talk magic numbers. That's always fun. So we know Kate Povich tonight. But then we don't know the next 2, and I think it's because they're lined up as Albert Suarez and Dean Kramer. But if they clinch the home wild card tonight, they could do some different things. Now, they could bring up a starter for Sunday, as opposed to, let's say, the bullpen game, which you don't really want to do, Johnny Holstaff, and then 2 days later play game 1. So you would have to get an innings guy. You've got Trevor Rogers down there. You've got Chase McDermott. It could be somebody like that. If you're not planning on keeping Kate Povich for the playoff roster, or certainly the first 2 rounds, you could option them after the start and bring somebody else up. Or maybe it's Brian Baker. You have to remove a pitcher. And the same with a position player. Is it going to be Heston Kjerstad? Or do you say, hey, once we know who our opponent is, if they're right-handed heavy, you want that left-handed bat, pinch hit, maybe DH? Or is it Emmanuel Rivera, because you want a right-handed bat, backup corner infielder? So those seem to be the 2 spots there for those 2 guys for that 1 spot. Jackson Holliday would come in handy as a pinch runner, I think. I think he stays. But, who knows? We didn't know Corbin Burnes was going to be shortened until yesterday. But they've got some decisions to make to pare this roster back down.
You're going to be getting more fan mail. We already know this. You're stirring up more right now. But you did mention Jackson Holliday being that good pinch situation for him, kind of inserting him a plug and play. 20 years old.
Yes.
And the playoffs in the American League East, that doesn't happen. This has been one of the most storied divisions, and especially how tough it has been in the past. How surprising is that to you to see that? Do you recall another moment of seeing really young guys? I mean, even Kate Povich is relatively young to be in this kind of a position. And we're going to just pretend that Gunner's not 23 because he acts like he's 35.
Right. I guess going back to the baby birds, which is kind of before my time. I was alive, but I wasn't following baseball then. It is unusual. I'm used to, the more veteran teams. I'm looking for Nelson Cruz around here. There's that Nelson Cruz guy. There's the Jim Tomei type guy. But you knew this was coming. If you have the number 1 farm system in baseball and all these young top prospects, eventually they're going to come up. And if you are past the rebuild, they're going to be on the roster. And somebody like Colton Cowser, he's playing every day. And I think right now front runner for Rookie of the Year. We'll see. Really like his chances on this. And, Jackson has been here quite a bit now. And, Heston Kjerstad, again, we don't know whether he's going to make the playoff roster. He did last year. Got as far as the on-deck circle a couple times, but he was on the roster. And, Jordan Westberg, his first full season. But these kids, and Povich has pitched in some big games. And if he wasn't doing this well, he wouldn't still be here. But you figured these kids were eventually going to have to contribute. And this is that time now.
It's going to be interesting. I can't wait to dive into it with you. We're just a couple days away from that. Roch, thanks as always for breaking it down with us.
Roll Tide.